Hawaii. It's a word that brings to mind lush and verdant landscapes, drinks poolside, and for many, a place that exists only to serve the whims of mainland tourists. However, the history of Hawaii as Americans began intervening is much more complicated than that. In this podcast, we hope to debunk the notion that America can have whatever America wants and that the Hawaiians appreciated it. Join us. In the late 1800s, America was on a bit of a power trip, annexing Hawaii, Puerto Rico, Guam, and invading places like Cuba and the Philippines. America was high on manifest destiny. Since the American West was conquered, Americans began looking elsewhere to satisfy their inevitable conquering desires. We'll be focusing on Hawaii, how it was before America stepped in, and what happened afterwards. Before Hawaii was disrupted by whites, it had a culture all its own. In fact, each island was unique in customs and society. Hawaiians relied on the sea for their livelihood and practiced some subsistence farming. Perhaps the custom that dictated their lives most was kapu, which dictated social customs for Hawaiians. For example, men and women could not eat meals together, and incest was not only allowed but encouraged. Kapu was the source of power for the royal family of Hawaii. It gave them power, rank, and prestige. Hawaiians also held dear a polytheistic religion and believed that spirits could be found in non-human objects and beings. Ancestors, gods, spirits, and humans were all part of the Hawaiian family. Ancestors were revered and spirits were both feared and loved. Considering the location of the islands, interaction with foreigners was minimal if it occurred at all. The first confirmed meeting was with British Captain James Cook in 1778. He reported a large population of healthy residents, but, in an absolutely shocking historical plot twist, European diseases decimated all but 10% of the original population by 1786, just 8 years later. This complete lack of immunity points to the statement that interaction had been minimal between islanders and foreigners before Cook's arrival. If you've been to Hawaii, you can visualize what I'm about to describe. Driving along the interstate, high-rises soar on both sides of the road, competing for prime real estate along the ocean. In 2007, about 4.5 million visitors arrived on Oahu, but the total population of the island is just under 1 million. Sometimes it can feel like an island of rich white people being served by native Hawaiians. There's a Ritz-Carlton a stone throws away from an ancient Hawaiian burial ground on Maui. The culture can seem trivialized and showcased. How did this happen? How did Hawaii grow into an archipelago of pink high-rise hotels and air-conditioned lobbies? It's certainly different than what Captain Cook encountered. The answer has to do with a group determined to spread their religion far and wide, missionaries and the business interests that came along with them. In 1820, the first missionaries arrived from New England, led by Hiram Bingham I. Most missionaries did not know each other, though many were married to people they'd met only weeks before they departed for Hawaii. The missionaries were Puritans at heart, so fervently Christian that they left their homeland for a completely unknown place. Imagine what they found when they arrived 164 days later. Hawaii was a completely different world than their original New England home. It was also a completely different situation than they'd expected. Unbeknownst to them, the ferocious warrior King Kamehameha had died, and the kapu system had been completely abolished. The Hawaiian people were left without a religion, the religion that had guided them for hundreds, if not thousands of years. It appeared that Hawaii could be easily Christianized. One problem, and perhaps the most daunting problem initially, were the sailors that were already at Hawaii. Since the discovery of the islands by Captain Cook, merchants were arriving in Hawaii in increasing numbers, bringing with them drunken, prostitute-loving sailors. Hawaii was a bit of a haven for these rascally folk, so you can imagine that the presence of the missionaries presented a bit of a dilemma for them. Imagine the sailors' horror when it appeared that the evangelization plan was actually working. The missionaries baptized much of the royal family in 1823 and eliminated Hawaiian traditions they disliked, like the hula. Prostitution and drunkenness were banned altogether, much to the chagrin of the sailors. While the missionaries had no sympathy for the irate sailors, the shipping industry and foreign businessmen were irked at Hiram Bingham's influence, feeling it discouraged commerce on the islands. While the missionaries worked their Jesus magic, Hawaii had quickly grown into a hot commodity. This was especially aided by the missionaries converting Hawaiian into a written language. The French and British were heavily involved in the 1830s and 40s, and the whaling industry made Hawaii into a booming region economically, incredibly different from just a few decades before. However, this success was rarely, if ever, shared with the native people. Evangelist Titus Cone wrote in 1830, "The country is being drained to fill up a few seaports, and to work a few plantations where the mower and the reaper gather in the harvest of death." White foreigners controlled absolutely anything of value in Hawaii, and sickness ravaged the native people. During this time, the influence of the missionaries was decreasing, and the influence of business stepped in. A missionary, Amos Cook, became an advisor to the king and created a land reform that allowed foreigners to purchase local land to plant sugarcane. As you can imagine, this didn't go well. White foreigners gained control of the economy quickly, while natives were pushed to the side. Soon, whites held control of Hawaii politically as well, at first in small government positions, municipally, but then moving to larger influence. In 1887, the White Reform Party created a constitution which removed power completely from the monarchy, imposed income requirements for voting, therefore excluding most Native Hawaiians, and disenfranchising all Asians. Just 6 years later, in 1893, the Provisional Government of Hawaii overthrew the Hawaiian Queen Liliuokalani, and the Republic of Hawaii was created on July 4, 1894. This made Hawaii its own nation. However, rumors of American annexation began to swirl. Sure enough, on July 7, 1898, William McKinley signed the Newlands Resolution, which created the territory of Hawaii for America. Most people fly into Hawaii and never consider the history. They enjoy their beachside accommodations and then leave the isolated archipelago for their homes on the mainland. One group, however, is trying to change all of that. The Hawaiian sovereignty movement goes by the words of Queen Liliuokalani herself. "The cause of Hawaiian independence is larger and dearer than the life of any man connected with it. Love of country is deep-seated in the breast of every Hawaiian, whatever his station." Today there are dozens, if not hundreds, of groups advocating for Hawaiian independence. In 1994, U.S. President Bill Clinton issued an official apology for the U.S. government's role in decimating Hawaii's culture and government. However, this did not affect Hawaii's statehood status, which was confirmed in 1959. The fact of the matter is that many Hawaiians do not want to be Americans. Whether or not you agree with the movement to de-state Hawaii is unimportant. The fact of the matter is many Americans don't even know of the havoc our ancestors wreaked on the Hawaiian culture and people. This is a common example throughout history, but it should not be forgotten. If you make a trip to Hawaii's sandy shores, stop for a moment and imagine the way it looked and felt before Captain Cook ever arrived.